G'day listeners and welcome back to another episode of the Keeper League podcast. With our AFL Fantasy podcast, it doesn't talk about the superstars. We only talk about the lesser knowns and the players who are going to bring value to your draft and Keeper League team. And a man who definitely is not a lesser known, I have with me today, Warnie the Warn Dog. How are you, mate?
Very well, Heff. Thanks very much for having me. It's great to be on here and in the middle of these buy rounds, which is always interesting when it comes to draft.
Do you play through them in your... start with your Keeper League. Do you play through them in your Keeper League?
No, we are full. I don't play a draft league that actually goes through the buys. So, which I don't know whether that's because I've been the commissioner of a lot and I don't love it. And I just go, or I'm thinking about some of my mates. So I think about Calvin a fair bit in things here because it would be a lot for his brain to try to actually realise how to play through the buy rounds. So that's one of it. But it's nice to have a break. That's the thing. Although now that we're out to 4 rounds, it's a bloody long time without your fantasy footy and your draft leagues.
That's the thing for me. Like, I feel like I have lost interest in all things fantasy over the last 4 weeks. I feel bad for the listeners because, like, I'm actively not watching games as closely, not checking them as much. And, like, I get to the end of the weekend and you go, oh, shit, I didn't really pay attention to anything that went on that game. Whereas the fantasy's happening, I'm looking at things a lot more closely. But it is what it is. It's on your league, Commissioner. I'm a big fan of playing through them because I play through them in one league and I feel like it doesn't actually affect the outcome at the end of the season too much. Like, you might drop a game here and there, but you're just as likely to drop a game due to a shit captain score, someone getting injured or whatever. Like, the ones I've played through, I felt like it hasn't really affected it.
It's just the worry, I guess, anyone, and this is, I think, of my mates, probably not me, that might blow up their teams too much and then there's going to be players available on free agents and the right people aren't necessarily getting them.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Especially in terms of free agency. I know in the DT Shiva leagues as well, I'm very slow on the waiver wire. I think I usually remember it around Wednesday to actually go and pick up players, and then by the time I get there, and they're gone. But I guess we'll segue into the DT Shiva. Have you been listening to the song contest over there, Warnie?
I have, mate. You did a bloody brilliant job. It was very good to listen to, but the whole thing was good. You obviously won a lot of points for production too, because I don't think anyone's ever sounded that good on the Shiva over the years, because it's been awesome to be part of that. And I didn't enter one this year, so it was nice to actually sit back and listen to everyone else's, but you were definitely right up there in the votes.
That's what I'm thinking. Like, I don't think my song is the funniest. I think it was Tom's I reckon was the funniest, but it wasn't me one. Was very, very funny. But yeah, I don't know if you get points for production or, I don't know. I hope just the fact that I want to have a podcast or whatever doesn't skew the voting, because I actually want the best song to win. And my voting, I thought Tommy was quite good in that one as well. But you said you've done them Yeah, that's it. You said you've done them in the past, so what have your songs been about?
I had one, actually. One that comes to mind was, and I can't find it, I must have been on an old laptop or something, but it was when we had some issues with Ultimate Footy and did an REM cover, End of the World as we know it, but the end of UF as we know it. So that was the thing on there. Had a couple of different ones, but yeah, I can't remember them. My brain goes way wrong, but hopefully they're there in the archives somewhere.
Might have to go back and have a listen. The other thing is, have you jumped on the craze that is footy numbers yet?
Mate, we have actually introduced it to Roy and Cal. Well, Calvin's been playing, but Roy hadn't been playing it, and we were having a bit of a crack. So we put together some stuff. We went on the easy level, and I was a little bit looking at that going, oh, right, maybe it is too easy for us, because we actually got a nice streak of about 35, I think it was.
That's good.
I'm going to have to do a fair bit of trimming of that video to make it actually watchable. But anyway, it's had a bit of a crack, and I think Roy's now addicted to it. He's probably got distracted during his podcasting today playing it.
That's awesome. Well, I guess a bit of a big announcement. I hope I can actually announce it properly, but I'm going to do it anyway. It's probably foolish, but I've got a new update coming. I've just got to iron out a few bugs / potential data loading issues that could cost me a lot of money if I get it wrong in terms of data storage and data space. But right now as we speak, I'm making a past players version, which has about 20,000 different players in it, I think, or when you add up the two teams that they've played for and all that's different numbers that they've worn and stuff like that. So it's not just current players, it should be older players as well, plus some rarity scores built in depending on the rarity of the answer as well. So that should be coming soon. But yeah, I have to work out how much it's going to cost me first, but that should be pretty exciting to play. How are you with the numbers? Because
our brains go to some of the old players as well. You sort of start thinking of some. So if you have a player that have worn the same jumper number, like they'll all count, will they, whoever you choose?
Yeah, correct. So like, you might get Carlton 5, and you could pick Chris Judd or Chera or anyone else who's picked whoever has worn number 5 before it, and then there'll be a rarity score based on what the popularity of the answer there.
So like your Bombers number 5, it could be James Hird, or we could all be going Brent Stanton and loving that one because he's a big one for our fantasy brains.
I've actually entered Brett Standard in a few times, so when it does come out, there'll be already a few loaded into that database.
Awesome.
But anyway, we'll get stuck into the show. It should be a short, sharp, and shiny one this week because there's only 6 games to talk about. Not a heap of players that haven't been noticed already. But got to spin the wheel for Game Day Squad before we start. Just a big shout out to Game Day Squad before we get into it here. Mega sponsors of this show. A lot of stuff that I'm doing right now would not even be possible without Game Day Squad. So thank you to those guys. If you haven't played yet, fantasy sports game where you get digital packs, you open the packs and get cards, use those cards to play fantasy. It's good fun. You've been setting your team, Warnie?
Have been, but probably not as much as I should be. That's my issue, and I think you got to be onto it. You got to make sure you're there, and again, buy rounds.
The beauty of it is you get the weekly prizes, so you can kind of check in and check out, which is kind of nice as well. But anyway, we'll spin the wheel. Let's see who wins this week. Spinning.
Spin the
And
wheel.
we have got flashback from the live show. Rory. Congratulations to Rory, who has won this week. Rory with 3 Ys. So Rory with 3 Ys. Get in contact with me, confirm your email, and I'll send you the code to the pack. Just email, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. I'll find it. I'll talk to you there. All right, let's get stuck into the round review. We'll start off with Brisbane versus St Kilda. Did you watch this game, Warnie?
I did. Well, in Classic, I was a new owner of Dane Zorko, so I had to be watching very closely in that and getting a little bit frustrated by the blokes that wear the same colour boots as him. But it was, it was an interesting game to watch. It was nice and high scoring, which is great for fantasy as well as actually the spectacle of a game, considering what St Kilda dished up the week before.
I had a dad's night, the first official dad's night at my son's school, where we just went to a pub, and I assumed we'd all be crowded around the TV having beers, but they booked a bloody dining table. I don't know what the go is, and there was no footy on. I could see it out in the pub in the front bar, but we were in the dining room. So
you guys were all itching and just on your phones looking at stats and scores and stuff.
Well, there's about 2 of us, I reckon, that are just full footy nuffies. And the rest of them just didn't care. So, that's probably why. But, yeah, I don't know. These bloody private schools, Warnie, I don't know how I feel about them. I'm a public school kid through and through, but sending my kid to private, I don't know how I'm feeling about it all. But anyway, no offence to any private school kids out there. Anyway, let's get stuck in. Darcy Wilmot, 101 points on the weekend. So, I think he had 94 or something last week, close to 100 last week as well.
Yep.
Last week we said, McKenna, with the reason why he scored so well, maybe McKenna, because he was subbed out with that ankle complaint that he had. But McKenna played this week, but he was subbed out again. I don't know. Darcy Wilmot seems to be the only distributor off that halfback line for him. Do you think this is like a sign of an uptick in scoring, or do you think it's just circumstantial? What are your thoughts?
Circumstantial a little bit with the St Kilda thing, but he's obviously very young too, so it is probably where we're seeing and talking keeper leagues, that's what we're here for, is that he's going to be one of our, premiums, in the future if he can hold that role down. You're not going to have Zorko there in the future as well doing that, so that's probably the main reason why I like that a lot, and I think it could be something, and classic hat on, I was thinking a couple of weeks ago, geez, that would have been a good play, or a few weeks earlier because of where his price was. And if he's available, I think you'd be snapping him up definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. I think there was few concerns about him just not being the fantasy type, more of a decent defender, quality over quantity off that halfback type. Kind of like in the mould of Starcevic, I reckon. Looks like he should be a fantasy type, but he's too good at defending to actually do anything else. But I think owners and people that are prospective owners as well are just starting to see something a bit different from Wilmot, and we've probably just going to monitor that over the next few weeks. Just a few other names from this game. We've got Ryan Lester, who had 109 points. I'm not buying into that at all. With 15 marks against St Kilda. That's just everyone takes a million marks against St Kilda. What I do like, though, is Jasper Fletcher. He had 83 points. I think he's every chance of being one of the better fantasy wingmen, if you know what I mean. Not a high-end scorer, but just one of the, Josh Dacos can average 90 in a season type thing. I reckon he could be one of those one day. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think, and he's exciting to watch as well. I think he's just going to be someone that'll be a mainstay as well. I think he just looks the part. He was ready to go pretty much from when he first debuted. So I think that's one that we'll see evolve, and the wingers are going to be interesting to see. It's a position that you take the good with the bad. They might be able to pop a decent score, but I think he's the sort of guy where his floor probably won't be that low. So I think that he should be all right all the way, and you'll be obviously everything is all very dependent on how many players you've got in your league playing out of that midfield position or whatever. But I think he's going to be a good player and a solid contributor. That's the sort of thing that you have that ends up being that sort of, without putting a massive number on it, but is he that sort of M5-y sort of guy, 4 or 5, that you're just rolling with, and he'll be there for quite a few years to come?
Yeah, I always say that M7 is the hardest position to field, and someone like him, if he's in that role now, could work his way up through the rankings over the years and could be okay. Tipping the cap to Jack Higgins, moving on to the St Kilda side of things, kicked 5 goals and only scored 89 points on the back of that, so not that sustainable, but nice score there. Jack Higgins, tip the cap to you. Ari Schoenmaker, there's the big one, though. 74 points. What do you make of his game?
Yeah, we saw his assets there with that big left boot, and that got talked about plenty of times in the coverage as well. But that's what's going to be a win for him. And I think with Nasiah Wanganeen-Miller out, that was what really helped him. He didn't really have to play too much of that defensive role, and sort of opened him up for that, which was quite a handy thing. It's going to maybe take some time, and I'm sure he'll be back in the VFL at some point during this season as well because of personnel and all that sort of stuff in the Saints lineup. But he's going to be a good player, I think, as long as hopefully all of his off-field stuff's all switched on and all that's good from here, because that's obviously been part of his story. But the game was great. I think half a dozen marks or so there, and they wanted the ball in his hands to do stuff, because you knew that was travelling that 50-plus metres as well, but also hitting targets. Like that first kick was brilliant in his game, where he's just spotted up a target inside 50, and that was brilliant. Yeah,
I guess being a Tassie boy, without going into too much details, do you know much about him? Like,
a little bit, yeah. So he was probably had a few off-field things, and probably things that I don't put out publicly as well, because we probably know a little bit more than that. But yeah, fingers crossed, things are working all right. But the Saints have been pretty honest with how they've been working with him too. Like they spoke about how he had to go back to the VFL to train with them in the pre-season, and interesting article too. He was living with Jack Steele in the pre-season, but now he's moved in with a host family. So yeah, hopefully they're getting all the things around him to make him the best person that he can be.
What I heard in terms of his football is just that he needed to learn the game a little bit more, like good individual type player, coming from like usually playing with him being the star in the team, but kind of quite often didn't know his role, what he should be doing without the ball, all that sort of stuff, and had to go back and learn a bit of that. So hopefully he's turned a corner in terms of his football there, and becomes a...
That's a big thing for a lot of players too, isn't it? Like you're just sort of thinking you've got to... You've been the big fish in a small pond, and I guess coming from Tasmania, that's an even bigger thing for some players as well. But yeah, to find your role and your position in the team, because it's going to look different. And how much do we see that? All these midfielders as juniors do have to find that other position that they play as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's move on to the Western Bulldogs versus Fremantle game. First one on the top of my list here is Lachie Bramble, who racked up a huge score of 134 points. Last week we noted that Bailey Williams was pushed into defence because Caleb Daniel and Lachie McNeil were on the wings, I guess, with Harvey Gallagher as well, which pushed him back. But you notice this week McNeil goes out, Caleb Daniel's the sub, so Williams goes back to the wing, but then Lachie Bramble pops into this hole and scores pretty well there. Do you think this will continue, or do you reckon this is just some sort of Bulldogs rotation?
Yeah, well, how much can we trust Bevo and the Bulldogs rotation? That's the first thing. But I guess he's been that sort of bit and that role player at times there as well. Like he's done well. Has he played every game this year as well? I think he's actually sort of stayed in that side.
Yeah, he's been around. If not, he's played most of them, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know. That's the hardest thing. It's an easy thing to say. Can you trust Bevo? But it'll be interesting to see where they move forward to, because is Daniel going to be there long term? That's definitely a thing. And if they are omitting guys, there's going to be those positions always up for grabs, and the magnets just spin a lot. But realistically, Bramble is that defender type, and so if he can get there in those friendly matchups, you could get these big scores popping at 134 is obviously huge, and if you had that, that's probably winning you a league matchup.
We saw Jason Johannisen earlier on the season put up some good numbers on that half-back line as well. Just a player that you'd think was done, or wouldn't be doing the same thing again, but it is a fruitful spot for him, so if he can hold it, might be okay. just one to monitor. I guess a few tip of the caps. Oh, and actually, no, they might be waiver options, really, when I think about it. Players like Rory Lobb, just 107 points, 3 goals. Would never want to field him, but a guy that's playing for contract trade, that sort of stuff, could pop up a few good performances here and there that you might be able to loophole on. So he's the first one there I was thinking of. Riley West, I've owned him in my keeper league. I think I've only fielded him once due to being dire straits, and I think he came through with a 70 for me. But he just seems to be popping up with 70s, or decent scores in the 60s, gets on the end of a few goals. Do you like either of those as waiver options in any of your teams?
I guess they can be, and forward line has been tough to field. So if it is that rotation that you've got going on the forward line and you're happy to just field for some matchups, but you could have a bit of a crack there. Bulldogs, well, where are they? What are they looking like? Were they better? Maybe, but that's the thing. I think it's pretty tough. Rory Lobb, definitely not, but Riley West could be that sort of player that can pop up. I just always, the old man that I am, I think of his old man and just go, yep, you could rack up Peel and West can pop out those ones there. But if you are looking for maybe a lower floor, it could be Rory Lobb with that, just because he is important for them for the rest of this year, I guess, with Norton out.
Yeah, you mentioned Scott West there. He's been popping up a bit in my historic footy numbers game. But anyway, for the Fremantle, there's nothing really there to talk about, apart from outside of the stars that we already over that high threshold of ownership in our league. So we'll move on to the Hawthorn versus Richmond game. First one's Jack Graham, 74 points. He's just the only reason that intrigues me is just because he's listed as a forward and he's playing on the ball. Would you want to trust him in your side?
I've trusted him many times before. I think he's just one of those names that I feel like I touch and I get onto. But yeah, I don't think so. I think it's mostly about just where the Tigers are at. That's my issue with that. It's a hard one to back in. But that midfield, that's forever changing a little bit through injuries. Prestia, what's going on with him? He's there for 1 week, not there the next, as we have seen across his whole career. But just as we're seeing now, I think that Taranto is getting it going. So if he stays in there to support him, he might be able to get a little bit of a chop out from some of that, because if Taranto is extracting and doing the thing there, Graham may get a little bit of a uptick in that. But yeah, I don't know. The forward status is nice for him. It could be someone that's there. If he just keeps that continuing, you could have a crack and take a little bit of a punt there and hope he is. But that 70 odd points is maybe his ceiling in a sense.
Yeah, like Damon Adams the other week pointed out, like these kind of fringe midfielders that have forward status, they're just so much easier to field, knowing that they could go into the midfield and stuff, even though they're not the kind of A-listers. They're the type that fill out your team and help you out along the way. The only one for the Hawks I really want to talk about is Josh Weddle. He's on the Too Good for the Podcast bubble. That is 2 90-plus scores in a row. Thoughts on Weddle?
Yeah, I like him. I think we probably liked him as a junior too, coming through as an option. And that's going to work for what the Hawks are doing. They're holding the ball. They're actually scoring fantasy points as well with what they're doing, and they're doing a decent job of it. Like, even if you're looking at, I know most leagues, unless you've got your advanced settings on with any sort of disposal efficiency, they've been very good with that as well. So that's the other thing that you're seeing at the Hawks, and the trust in that. But yeah, I like him a lot. I think he's someone that will be, again, a solid sort of citizen for our fantasy teams over the next few years.
Yeah, 100%. I'm loving the look of him. I get that. I've said it a million times, but I get those Nick Blakey vibes. But I reckon he's got maybe a little bit more of a fantasy game, depending on what role he's going to play. But who knows what that'll end up being as well. The guy's a freak. We'll move on to the Adelaide-Sydney game in a second, but I'll just thank some gold members. We are a member-funded podcast, and basically without members, this podcast ceases to exist. So thank you to the following people. Big Bird, Gerard Ajamatagi, I hope I said that right. Daniel Silverton, Domenico Lamourado, Martin Govett, Andrew Meller, Michael Tam Burrow, Dimitri Kolkanis, Sam Arnott, and Matt Nash. And that concludes the weekly butchering of names on my behalf. But if you're keen to subscribe and support the podcast, check out the links in the description below. A few membership options in any way that you can support the podcast would be greatly appreciated. All right, on to the Adelaide versus Sydney game. Not as much of a terrible game as I thought this would be. Did you catch this one?
I didn't get to see much of this. I was actually at a 40th birthday party and we were sort of a bit like your Friday night tucked away in a separate room. So we got the pub to put on the TV, which had to go around the corner and watch and be a little bit rude at times to have a look at that sort of thing. But especially when the Amati party was happening. But I think, and I was watching, I actually forgot about how bad some TVs are, like full-blown standard definition. And it was really hard to watch. It was, I've probably been lucky enough to have a decent TV for quite a few years now, and it was crazy to see something. It was not as far back as going an old CRT or anything like that, but it was pretty average to watch. So I didn't get to see heaps of it, but as I do, I follow things pretty closely via the phone while games are on anyway, and be that rude guy.
Yeah, I watched most of this one when the Swans started getting on a roll. I started doing a bit of work on the computer. But first one I want to acknowledge is Isaac Rankin. He's finally too good for the podcast. He had the 2 big scores before he did his hamstring. He's come back and he's put up another decent one. So it finally gets him over the mark. Doesn't miss a beat. Really important player for the Crows, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. He's just a gun, isn't he? I think, and he almost, whatever role he plays, he finds a way, and which is a nice thing. He's just great to watch.
Yeah, and it's just nice to see him not getting so stuck up forward as much. And Crows have just figured this out, that they need to put their more important players in the midfield. And I think as a team, it's going to be pretty interesting and exciting, really, to see what they do next in terms of this space. Like, I just want to see Billy Dowling just get a run in the midfield. Like, it's where he's been playing, all his juniors and stuff, sample stuff and putting up big numbers. Like, the season's done. They've just got to start experimenting with a few things, don't you think?
We've already seen a little bit of a shuffle there, like what's going on with Rory Laird. Like, is that a bit of a halfback sort of thing again? Back to the future a bit for him. So, they'll probably be getting the Rankin types, getting that little bit of, that extra midfield time and going, let's see what we can do with him and produce out of that. Yep,
100%. Kieran Strawn, he scored 80 points. Like, I would say if you've got a number one ruck, doesn't matter who they are, they'll score 80. The big dumb oaf ruckman, if they are the number one in their role, they will score 80 most weeks. Oscar McInerney is a prime example of that. Kieran Strawn, I hold in the same mould. I don't know, if you need a ruckman, pick him up, but he should be handcuffed to all the Rob owners, shouldn't he?
Yeah, he should be. What is going on with Rob? Are we going to see him again, or is that game over for him?
I don't know. Like, I don't get what Strawn offers, to be honest, either. In the same regard, I think they're
he's
just
a veteran as well, isn't he?
Yeah,
he's
I think it was Dale Thomas on the commentary kept referring to him as a young ruckman who was like, they're the same age. So, I think he
and that's.
I think he mentioned that he was ineligible for the Rising Star, which was pretty funny.
And that's what you're saying there. That's what you're doing with a bloke like that, the handcuff there, especially when they are unlikely to ever be rucking together as well.
Do you have any thoughts on Luke Nankervis, the halfback flanker who scored 74 on the weekend?
Yeah, I'm not too sure, to be honest, like where he's at, because even getting that Rising Star nomination a couple of weeks ago or whatever, like I wasn't sure exactly what that meant. But what's his role going to be? Like, is he an outside player? Is that too outside? But if it's an outside off the half back, that could be all right.
That's the big issue. Like, I got really scared a few weeks ago because I've got him on my rookie list as well. So in our league, that means you can keep him for an extra season off the back of your keepers. So it's basically an extra keeper spot for a few of the players. He's scored, I think it was, he scored in round 5, he scored a 70. Round 6, he scored a 70. Got a 67 in round 8, which isn't too bad. 87 in round 10, 111 in round 13, and then backed it up this week in round 14 with a 73. So
solid.
These are always like the types that you see just pop up with a few of these and you go, all right, there's something here. Like, all he needs to really do is just be a little bit more consistent, because the role is obviously giving him opportunity to score okay. I think, we had a bit of a scare for a few weeks earlier on, I think around when they went down to Hobart, down your way. Oh, no, you're Lonnie, but, I shouldn't offend you like that, sorry.
We're at the good end of the state. We're at the Bogues end of the state.
That's it. But when he went down to Tassie, he was on the wing a little bit more, and it just looked a bit gross for fantasy. But last few weeks, it seems like he's back on that half-back flank. So I think that's positive for owners. I'm definitely someone I've got my eye on going forward. Would you pick him up off the waivers if you had the chance?
Yeah, I guess you can, and that's the thing. And it would depend on where you're at with your build of your side.
Yeah, that's it. All right, you mentioned the Marty party earlier on. Is that a tip of the cap, or is there something there?
Well, when there's 10 disposals and all of them were shots at goals, because it was 9 goals, 1, it was pretty brilliant.
That's incredible.
Yeah, even to score that 131, I guess 9 goals can get you there, but without doing much else, it's pretty crazy, really.
The other one is Taylor Adams, 104 points. Finally seeing a little bit more midfield time. He was on everyone's watch list in the preseason for your classic formats. Do you think he's turned a corner?
Yeah, has his body turned a corner? That's the thing, which is what we've been scared about. And he's had a couple of issues, obviously, this year. So, yeah, he could do, especially with just, I guess, that more midfield time that could be there. And they might need to do a little bit of work, just getting bodies through there a little bit now that they're going to win the flag, aren't they? They'll be working towards that. And so getting that midfield mix working there, especially if there are if attention will come in some different ways. So thinking about guys like Heaney, probably cops a tag at some point there, like how they work him out of that. Like, does he go forward, those types of things. So making sure that Taylor Adams can do that, because he is and he has been sort of that nice mix of a mid-forward in the past too, where he's had successful seasons.
Yeah, it's the kind of role that you want for your keeper leagues. Maybe if he was a bit younger and a bit less injury prone, but just doing enough to keep that forward status for future seasons is what you want. But yeah, no, good to see him just putting up a decent score, and yeah, hopefully we can get that a bit more consistently in the second half of the season. All right, on to the North Collingwood game. Didn't expect this one to be a ripper either. So you catch this?
I did. I watched a fair bit of this, and I was obviously barracking a little bit for the Roos, being the don't mind the underdog and the giant killers, especially when your team's sitting up towards the top, and you'd like to see them stay there. So it was a crazy game, really. Like just even some of the fantasy implications, but to see how that finished as well, another umpiring error, would you call it?
Error, non-call. I don't know, but. Yeah, it's a weird world at the moment in terms of umpires. We won't get into that too much on this show. If I had Kays on the show, I don't think he'd ever stop talking about it. But let's move on to the North. Cam Zerha, he had 120 points, just a day out, 3 goals, 13 kicks, 6 handballs, 9 marks, 6 tackles, I think was the stat line. Would you count on this happening more consistently, or is it just one of those days?
I've loved Zerha, and I think it's more about loving him as a player rather than what he can do for fantasy. But yeah, we'll see these scores every now and then, and even in that game too, like the Roos were racking up points. Like at halftime, they had a heap of players sort of on that 50 mark or above sort of thing, which isn't normally a North thing, but it was working for them because they were obviously winning the game as well. But yeah, Zerha, it's one of those ones where you'll get these scores maybe once every 3 or 4 weeks possibly, but not someone that you can really bank in.
I think if we were going to ever see anything from Zerha, it would have been last season when he was getting that consistent midfield time. Just didn't really pop, so I guess it dampens the prospects for the future there.
They need him as a forward at the moment too. That's the other sort of thing, isn't it?
100%. They need a bit more firepower up there. But the big one is George Wardlaw. He's officially too good for the podcast. So congratulations, George. I know he listens weekly here, but 117 points. I feel like this was just a matter of time, but do you feel like there was maybe some harsh criticism earlier this season, given that he's only a second-year player, but people were expecting this sort of performances a lot earlier? What are your thoughts on Wardlaw?
Yeah, I think that's the thing too. He's not going to be a bloke that's going to rack up heaps of touches either. That's not his mould at the end of the day. So he's a great, as just a fan watching him and stuff, he's a bit that old school sort of player and again, the old school of it isn't about just racking up heaps of touches, but he's important in that as that inside midfielder, and I think he's going to complement what North Melbourne are trying to do moving forward anyway. So, it was nice to see a big score like that, and he would have been a great solution to a lot of coaches. I know Roy was looked at him for 1 minute, he reckons, with his trade, because Jai Simpkin was laid out in that game. So was looking at him as a bit of a shuffle because he was a few $1,000s more, but worth a bit of a look. And, I think it is a nice one. I'm sure in keepers that people have got him. They haven't really got frustrated enough to dump him yet. But, he's looking pretty good and could be putting one hand on that rising star too if he can keep this up.
Yeah, a few more of those performances. He should go close given the main contenders are now ruled out. Curtis Taylor, let's tip the cap to him. 97 points, plays that half forward role, pushed up to get a few touches. It was a game that suited him, I think. The big one is a lot of people have been grabbing Darcy Tucker off the waiver wire because of his new role. I looked at the injury list though. McKerch is only 1 week away, so he is actually one of your boys, McKerch. You might have some inside info there, but we're expecting him to return and just take Darcy Tucker's role.
Yeah, you'd think so. And the mail is that we'll probably see him this week, I reckon, or he hopes that he'll be there this week. He thinks he's putting his hand up for selection now, so should be right to go, which then has a shuffle, whatever happens with Tucker from there. That's why, it's a hard one, but he's had a couple of good decent scores in the last couple of weeks there too, Tucker.
Just looking at a few of the other names from this game, Will Phillips was subbed out earlier. Only scored the 39, but he was looking okay, and a lot of criticism coming out today that Clarko cost him the game by subbing him out. What's your thoughts there?
Yeah, I thought it was just a weird decision in a way,
Yeah.
but I guess what they were able to do, they still shuffled Shields or whatever, but I don't know. He was doing a pretty good job on Dacos, so I would have kept it there. But then again, I'm not a four-time premiership coach.
I guess just maybe one to look at if he's getting increased midfield time and going to be playing a bit more consistently. Might be just one to look at off the waivers if he can do a similar type job and rack up some points in the process. Still side bottom, another one that's just come on and off our radars all season. 84 points. He went into the midfield when just things weren't happening for him, I guess. With McRae subbed out. McRae was being used in the midfield earlier on. I don't know. Long term, do you just agree that there's too much midfield depth to come back to be any real chance to steal side bottom?
There is, and he's bounced around a little bit too. Like he was off a half-back a few weeks ago type thing, so you don't really know what his role's going to be and then how long he has left in the game, to be honest. Like, obviously, he'll be playing out this season. That's no problem with that. But, yeah, he's going to be a bit of that Swiss Army knife. Might have to play different jobs, play different roles and do different jobs at times.
Yeah, 100%. There's so much uncertainty with all the players that are out at the moment. Like, Beau McCreary is another one, getting a bit of midfield time. Put up a decent score the other week because he got like 1 million tackles or something like that, just playing in the midfield. But, like, you see these numbers and you get a little bit excited, but then you just remember what's coming back and it kind of just fades away, yeah?
Yeah, 100%.
On to the last blockbuster game of the weekend, and shock, horror, surprise, Port Adelaide lost to a team that resembled a top 8 side. Who would have thought?
Hinkley out.
I'm so
Hinkley
shocked.
out.
Oh, it's just beyond that now. It's a bit of a joke, but anyway. At the end of the day, I don't think it's the whole coach. It's more embodies like Port Adelaide, where I feel like we're just too afraid to do anything. Like, we're just not doing anything. Like, that's the frustrating thing as a supporter. You just want to see anything that like shows you're on a upward trajectory or not, in a decline or whatever. And it just feels like we just do nothing. We roll through the same stuff. But at the same time, we've got to coach you like, when we lost to Carlton, just has a bit of a joke on the sidelines. Doesn't really look like it affects him. Or dances around like an idiot on the sidelines after you win a game that you probably should win anyway, like just because it's a close game. Like, I don't know. I don't know where he sits for me. Well, I know where he sits for me, but I don't know where the whole club as a whole sits at the moment. But let's not get too stuck into it. All the Port players are rubbish, so I don't want to talk about them. The only couple I want to mention were Jake Riccardi. 97 points without kicking a goal. Usually when he puts up a good score like this, he's kicked it back.
Yeah.
He went into the ruck a little bit took 12 marks, got 16 kicks doing that role. Is there something to look at there?
Bit of opposite to the Amati party with that one. The Riccardi party didn't need goals. So, I guess that's the thing. You can be taking marks up the ground. That's what it's all about. 12 marks is a lot, though. Obviously, that's not sustainable to do that. But their movement, hopefully he can get it in his hands. But, yeah, it's not the sort of player that I'll be hunting for too much.
Yeah, I'm of the same mould. I always say, like, people always froth over, forwards going into the ruck, but takes them away from the goals where it's probably an easy avenue to get, 9 points, 12 points every now and then as well. The only other one to really mention was Toby Bedford. I think he saw the most uptick in CBAs this week. Did a tagging role on Zach Butters. We don't love taggers for fantasy scorers, but listed as a forward, if you're around the ball a bit more, there's avenue to more scoring. Isn't that correct?
It is, and as a Butters owner, did not love that very much at all, seeing that happen, because it was one of those ones out of the blue as well. Like, I'm not sure if Bedford's really done that role at any point of his career, sort of thing. So, yeah, it was interesting. Is that something that happens more and more? Because if it does, then there's the opportunity to score more points because, as you said, he's around the ball. But, yeah, I'm not sure if that's something that they'll continue with moving forward. But then again, it worked. So that could be something they could be on trend for, like all these bloody taggers are at the moment, on trend at the moment for a little while. Yeah, probably worth a sneaky pick-up if you've got nothing else to do in your league, just in case he does get that midfield time. Might pop out a few good scorers here and there that you can loop on easy. That's the round review done. We'll thank the rest of the Gold members. So thank you to Jason Owen, Todd Coleman, Chris Kelly, Ryan Ellis, Stanos H, Jack Scriven, Craig Hender, Blair Hallian, Nigel Morris, and Brad Lambert. Thank you to all of those for signing up, supporting the podcast, and thank you to all of you for having much easier names to pronounce than the last crew I had to read out. All right, if you want to support the show,
Link in the description below. It'd be greatly appreciated. All right, a few questions here before we wrap it up. Short, sharp, and shiny one through the bye rounds, Warnie, which is what we like. Nick Munro is asking, will Crisp and Dacos keep defender status in 2025? Now, Crisp obviously moving into the midfield a lot due to the midfield absences. Do you think that's a permanent thing? Do you think, if your Tom Mitchell's back, your Pendlebury's back, he's spending as much time in there? What are your thoughts?
It's going to be hard because I reckon his season totals will be looking pretty good for it. Yeah, I'm just actually trying to get up some heat maps to see what they might be looking like. But, yeah, he might be a chance, but we know that he still has a good chance to gain it as well at any point. So if things are different next year, like even if he was a straight mid, if it's that decision to hold or whatever, I think you still would.
Yeah, the issue is, I guess, he's averaging 53% of the centre bounces for the season right now. But if you look at round 0, 21%, round 1, 39%, round 2, 3%, that sort of stuff. Fast forward to, round 10 onwards, 81%, 83%, 77%, 91% and 88% this weekend. So if that continues, you feel like that 35% starting at halfback is gone. But I guess, again, it just depends what happens. My gut feel is that he just ticks over. He plays enough midfield now, but he probably gets it back next season. I don't know. What do you think? Yeah,
that's right. And it's going to, Mitchell's out for quite a while now, isn't he? So it's he might just have that time now that'll just cook him, basically. Yeah. That's the thing.
Dacos is up to 72% CBA, so there's no chance. I don't think that he's
game over now.
Status. Yeah, unfortunately. Matt Roach, this is a good one for you, given you're a Bombers fan. Can Gresham go? Won't be getting any midfield time with the Bombers' depth. Do you reckon you can drop Gresham safely?
I think he can, but, what I'll say, that role's locked now for him. So if you haven't seen enough, which we haven't really, and he's on that borderline to drop him or whatever, you might as well do that, I think, because I don't think things get any better for him from here on.
If there's a good younger player on the waivers, if there's a good younger player on the waivers that excites you type thing, it's probably a good one to go, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely, and that's it. And when you're looking at the Bombers, you've got all those guys that are definitely those next bananas in line, and Gresham's nowhere near it now.
Yeah, 100%. All right, we'll move on to the next question from B Nickel 17. Tom De Koning or Witts as my main ruck? Some insights would be greatly appreciated. I think just given the age factor, it's got to be De Koning, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, that's where I'm at as well, and I think he's now. I think the Pitbull is game over as well, if you're really thinking about it at the moment. I think he might pop in at times, but, De Koning's the one that you've got there, and I think the Blues now are locked and loaded with that, and Witsy pretty much, what's he got left in him? A year or two, max? Yeah. But, the Witts one, I don't hate it because of what he can produce, but you've seen a little bit of a drop-off already there.
Yeah, the De Koning one was a funny one because when Pitnet came in, everyone was excited. All right, he's going to get forward status now, which is a good thing because all we need is Pitnet to get injured and he goes back in and he's fine. But that's not happening now. But we've seen as a number one ruckman, my biggest fear is just Carlton get to the back end of the season and they're in a spot where they're going to got top four locked up and they just start to experiment a few things. They'll chuck Pitnet in to see if it makes a difference playing him up there or whatever, and just ruins a few people's finals campaigns. Do you reckon there's any danger of that happening?
No, I don't think so. But you don't know. You don't know. That's the thing. A lot of that stuff, it could just honestly things happen, and there might be someone else that's out that makes things change. So it's a hard one to crystal ball. But
100%.
I'd be all in now. That's where I am.
Yeah, my thoughts are just Witts is guaranteed number one when he's fit. So that's the only other thing. But like I said, De Koning's just shown enough now that he should be a fantasy prospect if he maintains number one role, and it just wouldn't make much sense to go back to the Pitnet now anyway.
And it depends on what you could be looking at as well. What's your plan B for Witts in the future? If that is for next year or the year after, what is that? If you're drafting, you're going to have to be trading, I reckon, unless you've got someone sitting there that you're feeling okay with. But
hopefully they've got the Ned Moyle just sitting on the bench, who's apparently the talk is he's going to move clubs for another role as well, but he might be the number one in the future as well. Who knows? At Diddley Docker, Ryan Angwin has shown a bit. Looks to have what it takes to make it at the level. Thoughts on him as a keeper prospects? Any thoughts there, Warndog?
Is he just mid only? Is that the issue?
Yeah.
Do you think?
He's an outside type, isn't he? He's not getting bulk CBAs or anything, isn't he?
No, there hasn't been enough there to make me feel like that's there. And again, we're at the Giants that it feels like their depth is obviously as big as anyone else's, although that has dried up, I guess, in the last couple of years. But I no is probably my answer. It's tough. I just don't think I could back that in.
Nah, as an outside type, and with Kelly just coming back this week, I think it was, with Cornelio to come back in, all that sort of stuff, those midfield roles are going to shuffle around a bit. He might look okay for now, but I just haven't seen a fantasy game yet. I've seen a game where he might be able to be an AFL player for a bit of a stretch, but nothing really indicates fantasy player for me just yet. Ant G25, this is a really good question, actually. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Going for a keeper flag, and he's right in it, needs a mid to replace Petrarca. So would you trade Petrarca for Jared Berry if it was going to win you a flag?
Jeez, that is a tough one because Berry's been good, obviously, and can score all right there. But, wow, I would find it very hard to trade Petrarca.
Yeah.
But for the flag, it could be worth it.
For me, it depends on the rest of your list. How's it shaping up? Are you going to be right back in the thick of things next season? You know, this year you might have a few things go your way. You still sneak over the line in the finals, maybe even win the flag. Anyone could beat anyone on the day. We've seen that in Keeper League Grand Finals quite often. But, yeah, I think if your team's maybe going to fall off a cliff, then maybe go through with it. If you think it's going to secure it to you and you don't really care what happens next year. If your team's okay and you think you've got another season in them, then, yeah, probably hold off and wait for next season and then just hope for the best this year. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah. Petrarca's only 28 as well.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
And Berry is 26. You know, if he was a little bit younger, it might have bought you that bit of time, but still good hitting zone if that's where it is. But does Berry's role change at times? Maybe,
100%,
you know, like that's the thing. Like he's probably scoring well because of the roles he's having to do at the moment. If that's not part of his future going forward, which we do see a few players change like that. It's a tough one.
Yeah, definitely. Anyways, that wraps it up for the week. Our listeners probably know all about you, Warnie, and following you everywhere anyway, but where can our listeners find you?
At WarnieDT on X or Twitter or whatever we want to call that. But, checking out all of our stuff on afl.com.au. Brand new podcast today, which was fun. A lot of fun. A lot of it at Calvin's expense, which was made that pretty good. So it's always a good thing. But, yeah, we've got heaps of stuff going on there. And also our Patreon, patreon.com/DT Talk. You can check that out if you like some of the stuff we do. That's some more stuff that we do, but probably ramped up to a bit of an old school level and, more with the beer and more with an F-bomb or two along the way.
Yeah, I've got to make sure you plug the Patreon. I've been a member since the first day, I think. I did see my payment lapse the other day. I had no idea how that happened, but resubscribed. I hope you weren't offended by that, or you probably didn't even notice.
I don't even understand how some of that works sometimes. It's like, I need to probably do an audit of my subscriptions of things because I clicked on Disney Plus the other day and go, geez, we haven't looked at this for quite a few weeks. And you're going, no, they're still taking the money out for me and any of that. But like you have, appreciate it, mate, for you jumping on board. Like I've been a member of Keeper League for quite a few years now. It's great to be part of and it's nice to support each other in the community. That's the other side of it. Yeah,
100%. Like for you guys as well, like given us so much from, for 20 plus years now, isn't it? Finally get the opportunity to actually support you guys in a way. It's definitely worth it. Plus, the bonus content's pretty bloody funny as well. Like, it's entertaining. So, it's there's many reasons to be involved.
It's a nice, it's that nice little outlet because for us, what's good about us as old men as well, this is our chance to get together and have that beer together and talk some shit and probably do what we'd be doing at a pub or whatever. So we get to do it with all of you guys, which is good.
Yeah, that's it. Well, hopefully we get a chance to have a beer together sometime soon. I've seen you twice this year, but probably no more trips. No more trips planned for this year, maybe in the pre-season next year. But thank you for coming on this week, Warn Dog, and it's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Heff. You're a legend. Thanks for all of your work that you do, mate, and let's get out of this buy round so we can start playing our draft again.
Absolutely. Get around us at Keeper League Pod on X, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all the socials. I'm across them. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.